Appreciate it. And thanks everyone for taking the time to join us for the webinar. I understand it was short notice, but really thought it'd be a great idea to host the webinar and kind of walk people through the announcement and what we see and what's, the significance of this initial maiden mineral resource estimate and what it means for the broader project, because that's really a big part of the story here. It's, this maiden mineral resource, its size, its significance, the amount of contained metal in it, the fact that it's from surface, and how this reflects upon the upside across the Dante project that we are yet to really start testing. So what I'll do is just walk through the announcement and the highlights page, and then I'll go through the numbers and also just talk to the map of the overall project a little bit. And then that will probably sum up my presentation part of the webinar. And as Evie said, we're very happy to take questions at the end. So please lodge any questions you have, and Evie will be sure to pass them on to me for answering at the end. So here is the release from this morning. So the maiden mineral resource estimate that everyone would have seen is 148 million tonnes at 14.8% titanium, 0.54% vanadium, 0.18% copper, and 0.33 grams per tonne 3-PGE. And 3-PGE is a combination of platinum, palladium, and gold. And that we've used here a copper equivalent. So that equates to a 1.38% copper equivalent. And I'll talk to in a moment why we've chosen to use the copper equivalent. Obviously, copper is not the most valuable metal in this polymetallic suite, but upon quite a bit of review, we believe that the copper equivalent was the most appropriate equivalent to use, and I'll explain why shortly. So within there is 22 million tonnes of contained TiO2. So it's already, a very, very large resource with a lot of contained metal. 800,000 tonnes of V2O5, 270,000 tonnes of copper, and 1.6 million ounces of 3-PGE, which is copper, gold, platinum. And that's broken down here individually into 400,000 ounces of gold, 880,000 ounces of platinum, and 330,000 ounces of palladium. So even though the precious metals and copper are precious metals and gold and platinum and palladium. So let me step back. This is ordered in order of value. So we've listed everything here in order of their relevant value within the resource. So you can see we've listed titanium first, the vanadium second, copper third, and the PGMs and gold fourth. So that is the order in which the value of each of the component metals are at the moment in the current maiden resource estimate. But already this is from surface. So we can already see that this is it's a huge, even as a precious metal deposit on its own, it's already a significant precious metal deposit by any standard. But that is, again, the third or fourth most valuable component to this polymetallic resource. Within that resource, we've been able to define at this very early stage, which I think is very exceptional, and I'll talk about why in a moment, a high-grade indicated classification resource under the JORC 2012 code of 38 million tonnes of 18.4% TiO2, 0.73% V2O5, 0.23% copper, and 0.72 grams per tonne 3-PGE. And that equates to, on a copper equivalent basis, a 1.87% copper equivalent on a recoverable and payable basis across the different products that we have reported here based on the metallurgy. So within that, 7 million tonnes of titanium, 280,000 tonnes of V2O5, 90,000 tonnes of copper, and almost 1 million ounces of 3-PGE. And you can see the breakdown there of gold, platinum, and palladium again. So a significant portion of the metal is contained within the indicated component. So the maiden resource estimate was completed by an independent consultant, Ken Lomberg from Pivot Mining Consultants. So we picked Ken because Ken is a world-recognized expert in the definition of mineral resources which are related to laid intrusions, and specifically the Bushveld laid intrusion, but also many other laid intrusions around the world Ken has worked on. I think he's worked on 70 or 80% of all of the junior platinum-bearing resources in the Bushveld complex, and he's got over 38 years experience. Now, Ken was recommended to us by one of our shareholders and a well-known a well-known company director who had a very successful platinum mine development in South Africa many years ago, and he used Ken and also had worked with Evan Kirby. So we've really put together here what we believe are the best team, technical team who have delivered for people that we know and respect and who have had great success in reporting on resources of this nature and also developing, producing mines of this type. So both Ken and Evan have worked on a range of different platinum-bearing reef-type deposits, titanomagnetite, vanadium, all of those combinations, and really, you know, they are two of the top experts in their field for these types of deposits, which is why we've used them. So we've got there the metallurgical test work. So we reported that early in the year, I think in March. So Evan has undertaken the metallurgical test work and continues to do that work for us. We're still doing some optimization work, which we will continue. We probably won't stop. I mean, the metallurgy is something that you always want to be working on and continuously improving, and that's certainly what we're committed to. So we'll continue that process. I think this is a really exceptional point, and we put this in here just to highlight the simplicity of this deposit style. This resource was delivered within around 12 months from the initial discovery. And the cost of discovery, or the discovery cost, if you convert that into all of the money we've spent over that period into and divided by the resource, is around 7 cents Australian per tonne of resource. Now that is exceptionally low cost. And what that really highlights is the simple nature of this deposit style. It is like a coal seam that's continuous, geologically continuous. It's very shallow dipping, and it's very consistent. So that consistency and that simplicity is one of the reasons we've been able to also report an indicated component in this resource using only drilling that was done last year. So we ran 3 drill programs last year in 2024, and we haven't undertaken any further drilling this year. We've completed the metallurgical test work this year and also the MRE based on that data and those samples we collected last year. And to be able to do that in such a short time with this amount of drilling really highlights the low cost of discovery, low cost of resource definition, resource upgrade, and also the metallurgical simplicity that has allowed us to get to this stage with such a small investment at such a low cost. And we expect that cost will go down over time because we've learned a lot about the deposit and how we explore these types of deposits on the project. And exploration was much more expensive when we started because we were still learning. So we anticipate that cost per tonne of resource moving forward to go down significantly. Another really key point here, and I'll show this on a map in a moment, is that the MRE covers less than 10% of the outcropping strike on the project. And it's conservative in the sense that it is from surface, and it won't take much more drilling to be able to step that out. Even if we didn't add any strike extensions onto this, we would anticipate that a substantial increase in tonnage would be possible by doing a 100-meter step out on the existing MRE without strike extension drilling. But again, that is only less than 10% of the mapped outcrop on the project, the mapped mineralized trend. And we expect, we're undertaking detailed reconnaissance across the broader project now, which is now 1,200 square kilometers. We expect that mapped outcropping strike is going to increase. So we're looking here at maybe significantly less than 10% of the outcropping strike just on the at-surface portion, based on the limited drilling from last year has resulted in a 148 million tonne resource with a huge amount of titanium, vanadium, copper, platinum, gold, and palladium. So this really highlights the exploration upside potential on this project. And we're really excited to get out there and start drilling out some of these other reefs. We've only drilled 2 out of the 9 reefs that are mapped at the moment. As I said, we expect that number of how many reefs are there to go up with the ongoing reconnaissance. So we invested a lot of money in the metallurgy over the last 8 months, and that initial metallurgy has confirmed excellent recoveries and concentrate grades across all of the key metals. That includes the titanium, the vanadium, the copper, the gold, and the platinum. We use very simple and low-cost off-the-shelf processing tools to produce 3 different concentrates. That was a titanium ilmenite concentrate, a vanadium and magnetite concentrate, and a high-grade copper, platinum, and gold sulfide concentrate. And each of those concentrates had exceptional recoveries and grades into the concentrate product. And of particular note is the very high recovery and high grade of the titanium and vanadium using only magnetic separation to arrive at 1.81% V2O5, which is one of the best vanadium and magnetite concentrates in the world, which comes out as a byproduct. It essentially doesn't cost us anything to make that. And a 65% recovery on the TiO2 into a 40% ilmenite concentrate. That is the best, or definitely one of the best in the world that we know of in hard rock titanium deposits. The optimization work is ongoing. That was all unoptimized work. We're working through that at the moment. Phase 3 drilling here is going to commence imminently. So we're making preparations to undertake the 3rd phase of drilling. That's going to include a combination of resource upgrade and expansion on the existing MRE area. We've got access now to some areas which we didn't have access to previously within that MRE area, which have potential to have a higher grade and thicker mineralization, and we'll be targeting those areas. And we'll also be doing some step-out drilling to add tons to the existing resource. But on top of that, another thing we're really excited by is having the opportunity to start testing some of our new targets, and that will be a key part of this upcoming program. It will include some untested reefs, some reefs which have never been drilled before, which extend for several kilometers. It will include some EM anomalies, electromagnetic geophysical anomalies, which we'll be putting some information out soon. We have previously put some information out on these targets, but we'll be putting together some further updates on these targets. And so we're very excited to be drilling both of those different target styles, being the typical reef layers and also some of the EM type targets that we haven't drilled on the project before. Also, most people would know that we recently raised $4 million through a strategic placement to Golden Energy and Resources and Matt Lattimore, and we remain fully funded. That was only a month or 2 ago, and we have only just soon to go into our next drill program. So we remain fully funded for all of the upcoming work, all of the drilling, all of the metallurgical work, optimization test work, and all of the other geophysical and reconnaissance mapping work that we have planned for the foreseeable future. So that puts us in a very good position. So I won't read back over my comment there, but everyone can read that if they wish. But we can see here, I'll just draw on this. So here is the project. It's about 1,200 square kilometers. So it is an extremely large project. From one side to the other is about 80 kilometers. So this project is, just to put it in if we make reference to where our recent strategic investment primarily came from, which is Singapore, the project is about 1.5 times the size of Singapore alone. And we have boxed up the majority of the Jamison layered intrusion, which hosts these reef layers, these mineralized layers, which are kind of like coal seams, but instead of coal, they're full of metal, copper, gold, titanium, vanadium, and platinum. And what we've drilled out and converted to resource here, you can see these red lines that we've mapped here. These are the outcropping reefs that have been mapped. So in total, this adds up to about 80 kilometers of strike of the parts that have been mapped, just kind of highlighting them here. And where we've reported the initial resource is about 6 kilometers of reef 2 here, about 4 kilometers of reef 1, and about 1.5 kilometers of reef 1 south. So all of this in here has not been included. Reef 5, all of this reef, none of the other reefs have been included. All of the reefs that have been included in the resource are open, down dip and along strike in both directions. So completely open, and it's all very shallow. So it's all from surface. It doesn't extend to very deep at this point, and is limited by drilling. So limited only by drilling. But what I'll also point out on this map, now this label, I wish I had have moved this off to the side, because you can see some very impressive lineaments in here that I'd like to talk about. But you can see these linear features here that aren't mapped as reef. I'll just outline some of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you start to zoom in, you can see many more. On our detailed magnetics, they light up a little bit better. But it doesn't take a scientist to really identify that a lot of these lineaments that we see here, which look like they extend from the reefs that we have drilled and have the same kind of magnetic signature, even though they might be under a meter or two of sand, have definitely the characteristics that appear to reflect possible mineralized reef layers. So our exploration program here is a combination of mapping everything that's outcropping, because we do not believe that everything that sticks out of the ground has been mapped yet. It's pretty clear from the historical mapping that they have not covered all of the ground. So we want to map all of the reef that's outcropping, characterize it all, and we want to drill test as many of these different reef layers as possible, as quickly as possible, but also include in that these other possible reefs which don't stick out of the ground and would have been missed historically, but could represent exceptionally large discovery potential on their own. Each one of these layers are between 5 to 25 kilometers in length. The maiden resource covers about 11 kilometers of strike, and we've reported 148 million tons from surface. And that is constrained only by drilling in the down dip and along strike direction. So you can start to see here a picture of how big the potential is on this project. Even if half of these layers converted into a resource, it is just an unbelievably large exploration upside here. So we are really excited to go out and drill these. We want to drill as many of these as possible, as quickly as possible. We're working on opening up access to other targets we don't yet have access to, and that's a big part of our work at the moment, and getting out and drilling the new targets we do have access to as soon as possible. Just clear that. So just to, sorry, off, go down and zoom in a little bit. So this zooms in around the resource area. So this is about maybe 30% of the Dante project on this map. You can see again there, here's the Hyperion or Reef 2 component of the resource, essentially clipped to the drilling. It's open in this direction, and completely open in the down dip direction. And here's the Creus component, Reef 1 North, and here's the Reef 1 South component. So again, constrained only by drilling. This is open in this direction and down dip as well, and definitely open in this direction. The mapping shows the reef to be continuous between. And then we have these other reefs here, some named, some not yet named. This is Reef 5. So there's a lot of drilling even in this immediate area to do to test additional targets and a lot of resource growth potential. But again, this is only a small fragment of the overall project. And again, I'll just point out these layers which are not outcropping, which the geophysics indicates maybe additional reefs. We can see one here, which, I mean, that one alone is 16 kilometers in strike length, which is about 1.5 times the length of the resource we've just reported. There's another large area between Reef 1 North and Reef 1 South. We've got a layer here, which could undercover, which could potentially also be a reef. Another one here, and then you can see extending into the recently acquired HRM ground that we acquired 100% of in May this year. You can see that the magnetic signature really starts to thicken up and get more intense in this direction. And a lot of this is undercover, might be a couple of meters of sand. But what's interesting is how strong the magnetic signal becomes when we move over in this direction. And sorry, just a few more there. It's not obvious. You can see more. this is just one little small snapshot of the project as well. So the potential for additional reef mineralization is significant. Now, the key thing about the magnetics here is that all of the copper, gold, titanium, and vanadium and platinum that we've found so far has been hosted in highly magnetic layers. So the magnetics is a fantastic tool for us, and it's something that we are investing quite. I mean, it's a very cheap tool, but we're investing time and money in getting the most value out of our magnetic data set. For this reason, it is definitely one of the very best exploration tools on this project. So I think that probably says most of it. I'll just scroll down to the plots quickly. This is just an example cross section showing the entire mineralized unit, which is the whole gabbronorite layer here, which is 50 odd meters, 60 odd meters thick. It is mineralized all the way through. We haven't reported a full copper equivalent here with all metals included. But the entire thing from start to finish is mineralized, and what's in our current resource is parts of the upper reef and the basal reef. So there's potential to expand the amount of material which is included in the resource with some optimization work that's ongoing at the moment. We're looking into different types of ore sorting and magnetic separation. As I said, all of the valuable metal is contained within magnetite, and so there's a potential of, when you separate the magnetite out of the host rock, of potentially upgrading into a pre-concentrate, which could see greater portions of this mineralized unit brought into the resource, which would potentially substantially increase the tonnage without any further drilling. And then here are just two snapshots of the resource. Now, again, we've used the copper equivalent for the reason that this is a polymetallic deposit and there are multiple metals in it. The use of an equivalent really has to be in a way that simplifies the understanding and potential to do a peer comparison for people. And that's the reason that we've selected the copper equivalent. Copper is not the most valuable metal in this deposit, which is clear. We've listed the different metals in order of their value as we've outlaid the resource and the contained metal. So copper is the third most valuable, but it is the most valuable component in the sulfide concentrate, which is a key component of this resource's value. And it is the metal which is commonly used in polymetallic deposits to report on a copper equivalent basis. So that's the reason we've used the copper equivalent. It's difficult to show the distribution of grade across this project without using an equivalent, because using a single metal value, and again, this is on a recoverable and payable basis across the metals, and we can see, I'll just scroll back up. You can see the recoveries and the payabilities that have been applied here are all detailed in this table, in the metal equivalent table, and the calculation which has been used to arrive at the copper equivalent number is listed here as well, along with all of the assumptions and the prices of the relevant metals and the dates that those prices were selected from the various locations. So if we look at it on the copper equivalent basis, which allows us an easier way to look at the distribution of grade and the grade of the deposit, you can see here we've highlighted it in different equivalent values, and it's very consistent. And as you can see here, it's open in all directions, limited by outcrop. You know, where it outcrops is essentially where it stops, but not necessarily in all cases. There may be cases where mineralization may extend further out to the northeast here, and we're looking at that as well. But you can see that the resource here is clipped to the drilling. So there's nothing stopping this resource from being expanded out, filling this gap. Likewise up here, filling this gap, extending this part out. You know, this is just only constrained by drilling. So very easy to go in and put some more drill holes in here and add significant tonnage to this resource. And the spacing doesn't have to be really, really tight, because again, it's the geological continuity is exceptional. And Ken Lomberg, our resource consultant, was very impressed by that factor, which is why we were able to put some indicated into this resource. We also expect that we can increase the indicated component with some relatively low-cost further sampling of existing drill data as well, drilling as well. So this is Creus, Reef 1 North. And now we're scrolling down. Here is Hyperion, Reef 2. And someone commented this looks quite thin, but it's because it's 6 kilometers long. It's 6,000 meters long, over 6,000 meters long. And it's just the stuff that's at the surface and clipped to drilling. So it may look at first that it's thin, but it's not thin. It is open in all directions. And it's, like I said, over 6,000 meters long. And all we really have to do to potentially grow this is to add some additional step-out drilling in the down dip direction. It's open to the south along strike and to the north. So we'll be looking to add to this, to Reef 2, Hyperion. And also there's some big gaps where we haven't drilled, and we've been doing some mapping, and we've got access to a lot of these other areas in here as well. So we think there's, same with Reef 1, we think there's good potential to not only increase the grade of the resource, but also add tonnage relatively quickly. All right, Evie, I think that's probably says it all for me, but definitely happy to open for questions.
I'm just going to let everyone just digest what you've just said, and hopefully we'll get a few more questions come through. But just one off the bat, has there been any discussion in terms of the US government, Department of Defense, Mineral Suite is is critical for rearmament, fighter jets, etc. And like, has anyone approached you yet for what we're discovering here and the enormity of it? Considering you've just scratched the surface. And just to elaborate on that, I don't know if anyone caught 60 Minutes last night. There was a huge dependence on Greenland and them talking about they've got the next, rare earths and less dependence on China, etc. I think everyone knows the story.
Yeah, thanks, Evie.
Okay.
Look, yes, we have been looking and talking about the possibility of US federal government initiatives. Now, there aren't many examples yet of Australian companies or out of the US assets being funded by US critical mineral initiatives, but there is clearly a very, very strong focus on the US securing supply chain of those metals which are considered critical, and critical, excuse me, critical means essentially if there's a dominance and reliance on China for production. So, the US government does not want to rely on these critical metals from China. Allied nations like Australia is clearly, the next best thing to having the resource specifically in the US. These metals definitely fall within that critical metals focus of the US government. The titanium, the vanadium, they are used in aircraft, fighter jets, space, military equipment, weaponry, and also obviously copper. Everyone knows the case for copper as well, and the PGMs. So I think that most of that type of funding is for the post-scoping study, more development stage projects. And again, I haven't seen yet an example of an Australian asset being funded by that, but let's see how things progress. I think a key part is the Australian federal government funding that's available for assets like this. You look at Australian Vanadium received $49 million for the development of their vanadium resource in West Australia, which is, it is a large resource. I mean, vanadium is a component of this resource, of our resource, and it is on its own a substantial vanadium resource. So you can start to see that a resource like this in Australia has a very good chance of being eligible for significant federal government funding as we progress. And we'll certainly be looking to apply for and secure any funding that is available for development of our resource, our current and future resources on the project.
That's great. Just another one that's come through. What do you need to do to get access to the additional drill targets you mentioned not currently having access to?
Yeah, so it's the standard process that we do for all of our targets. The project is 1,200 square kilometers in size, right? And the targets individually are huge. So you can't we have access to all of the targets, but when you want to drill each target, you have to do further work. So, to do the drilling clearance, you've got to do another heritage survey. Obviously, all the targets are outside of known heritage areas already, but it is a process to redo a more detailed heritage survey, prepare for drilling, which we do always for every single drill target, and we need to do apply for a program of works with the government, again, standard procedure, which requires us to know exactly where we want to drill and put that application in. That takes about 3 weeks. The heritage surveys can vary in time, and they're really the two key things.
Okay, so just one more that's come through. Aside from the third round of drilling, what are the next steps for Terra? Like, for example, is there a scoping study plan or PFS?
Yeah, so obviously we've done quite a bit of work on the reasonable prospects of economic extraction to be able to arrive at this indicated and inferred maiden resource, and we'll continue that work as we continue down the line. What we are looking at is how big is this actually going to be? What we are confident in is that we've only drilled a fraction of the mineralization on this project. So our first focus really is to continue to drill and expand this discovery and make new discoveries and build it up. And we'll be undertaking the economic assessments as we go along. Part of that is the further metallurgical optimization. Another part is discovering what else is there and building that into the resource and ensuring that we're including the right amount of resource, I suppose, into what would be, the initial scoping study.
Okay, so it's fair to say what we can expect further updated mineral resource estimates as we drill along.
Oh, absolutely. No, we intend to work on an updated mineral resource. And we'll commence that process on the upcoming drill program. And any new discoveries we'll look to convert into resource very quickly as well. And I think we've shown here that we can do that. We can convert discoveries into resource very quickly and very cheaply, but it's going to be faster and cheaper moving forward because we've learned a lot already about this and we've established now the team to do it. We've got Ken, we've got Evan. We didn't have them when we started, the process. And so it's going to be a much more seamless process to convert discoveries and new drilling into resource upgrades and additional resources.
Yeah, just another question that's come through that it might be a bit early to talk about offtake agreements to help fund development, but is that something that the board and yourself have considered?
We definitely consider it, and we have had interest. We obviously was clear even before the resource was published that this is going to be a very, very big resource, even beyond what we have reported is globally significant already. But I think it's clear to everyone has potential to get much, much bigger.
Yeah.
So we have interest in many of the different metals and products, especially after the metallurgy was first reported. What we're conscious of is not giving away too much upside on the project too early because it is so big. We don't need to do that. And so we're open to talking about various scenarios, but we certainly won't be rushing to give away too much upside unnecessarily at such an early stage when there's so much low-hanging fruit for us to go and grow the company and the resource base on and create value at a very low cost base in the very near future.
So just on that, it's 80 kilometers. That's what you said. Is that right?
That's the mapped part of it.
Yeah.
But I would expect based on what hasn't been mapped and what looks pretty clearly to be reef layers. We believe there's a lot more material which hasn't been mapped, which is sticking out of the ground for one. And we're in the process of working to map that now. We also believe that there's a significant amount of potential mineralized reef, which is not visible at surface, but may only be a meter or two beneath the surface. And it's really the geophysics and the auger geochemistry which highlights that. So I can't put a number on what the ultimate kilometer length would be, but it could be several hundred kilometers of strike. If we think, and we expect there will be variation in the different mineralized layers across the different metals. There may be some which are, if you look at the bushveld, in the stratigraphy, you get totally different metal concentrations. You get vanadium, titanium at the top of the system, and you move into the more PGM, chromite type going deeper in the system, and then you've got your kind of nickel bearing and with copper and polymetallic reefs as well, like the Platreef and UG2 and Morenski. So we expect that, seeing as we own essentially all of the layers within the Jemison layered intrusion, and we've intentionally acquired that intrusion. I'll scroll down just to show you. So here's the Jemison layered intrusion in green. You can see we've got the upper and the lower part of it, and all the layers contained therein within the stratigraphy, because this is an intrusion which was laid down like a sandwich. It has been tilted up. All the layers are exposed at the surface or under a few meters of sand. We've intentionally boxed this up so that all the different layers and the different metal grades, theoretically in the different layers, we will have either exposed or very near surface. So that's another one of the reasons why we're really excited to go out and drill more of these reefs to see how the metal grades vary across the stratigraphy and where we get, examples of much higher grade precious metals or much higher grade base metals or different mineralogies. We think that based on what we understand, the upside in that is significant as well, not just in expanding what is known, but finding what else is there in this huge system.
It's amazing. It just surprises me every time that just because it was looked at how many years ago, how far exploration interpretation has come. There's just so much more to unlock, not just here, but probably everywhere.
Yeah. Well, it's unbelievable. When we had our resource consultant Ken come out to site, he couldn't believe that it was all sticking out of the ground, all of this reef, because he's worked in the bushveld for so long, and he just said it looks so much like the bushveld, the layering, the geology, the different units, and to see it sticking out of the ground, he just couldn't understand how it hasn't been taken yet, how it hadn't been drilled and discovered.
Right
But it's
people,
just,
right time.
yeah, exactly, right people, right time. And this map here now we've kind of come to, and I just wanted to point out here, you can see our project and us being surrounded by BHP, but now you can start to see this cluster of sulfide deposits. You've got BHP's Nebo-Babel here, 390 million tons at 0.3 copper, 0.33 nickel, with some PGMs in it. Sakuth, 160 million tons at 0.6. You've got Dante, 148 million tons at a 1.38 equivalent, which is just a very small portion of what's on the project. So I think there's definitely potential here for us to well exceed BHP's current resource endowment across their portfolio in the West Musgrave region in time.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for your time. Thank you everyone else for your time. This has been recorded, so we'll get the replay out. If you have any other questions, please shoot them through to Thomas. I'm sure that he'll be more than happy to answer those. That's it.
Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate your time. Thank you. Thanks, Evie. Bye.